funded by the British government. So how can any media worker be assured that she won't be the next target for reporting for either the BBC or any other international media outlet? There are similarities in the political atmosphere and the issues facing journalists during the time of Nimaraja's killing and even today. At the time of Nimaraja's death, it was Chandana Keerthi who was president. She was new. Now it is Honorable Vasagan. They both were voted in by the general public, believing their promise for change, especially doing away with the executive presidency and delivering solutions to Tamils. Now both were voted in for change. However, the witch hunt against journalists telling the real story of armed oppression and the people's resistance did not change. Nimarajan, from a heavily militarized Jaffna, who reported on atrocities by the IPKF and the Sri Lanka military and paramilitary sponsored by both governments, paid the ultimate price. Ayatollah Nadesan and Sibiran are among those who were killed during Chandrika's time in office. The justification for these and more than 40 other Tamils who were killed, and the attacks against many journalists, including Sinhalese, who highlighted the incessant atrocities committed against Tamils and the need for a dignified solution, was that they are Tamil tiger stooges. They are paid by the diaspora. They are in the payroll of Tamil tigers. Many had to flee to save their lives, living in an unfathomable void in the country's quality journalism. Has all this changed? Today, in the heavily militarized North and East, Tamil journalists would tell the story of continuing struggle for justice, for crimes during the war and its aftermath, as well as ongoing issues such as land grabs and the pushbacks by the public or still under threat. Kumaran, whose work has appeared in international media, has been constantly covering Ravaya and Sooriyan mass grave excavations. He and many others have been visited or summoned by the Counter-Terror Investigation Department, the CTID. They have been assaulted, their families have been intimidated. Many others have been summoned for covering cultural events, including book launches and the memorialization of the wounded. When Nimarajan was reporting for BBC Sunday Share, it was also broadcast through the Sri Lanka Broadcasting Corporation network. It came just after the SLBC News Bulletin. His reports were a challenge to the state narrative on the war front. Be it government setbacks, atrocities committed against Tamils by either Sri Lankan state forces or its paramilitaries, vote rigging, that was always difficult for the government to solve. So the government was forced to counter the credible reporting from the ground. Soon after Sunday Share went off air, it was followed by a program in which the SLBC chairman himself came on air to deliver the counters. It was not information. It was a tirade against the BBC and staff, including Nimarajan, labeling them as Tamil tigers. But that was the best they could do. However, the singular majority accepted this falsified mainstream narration rather than analyze the factual information. They believed what the official media said. I remember Nimalarajan once relating a terrifying incident during the time of the Indian military occupation in Sri Lanka's north and east. Following a report by him about the Indian peacekeeping force, he was visited one night by one of the paramilitaries. Nimalarajan was forced to kneel down. A pistol was shoved in his mouth. The man who came threatened him with death, saying that he'll put a bullet in his head if he does not stop this type of reporting. The perpetrator later left the island for India with END-less paramilitaries when the IPKF vacated the island. Later, this man went to become the head of a Tamil broadcast operation from London. Even today, journalists on the ground in Sri Lanka's north and east face intimidation when they report on land grabbing, militarization, civilization, mass graves, environmental destruction through constructions without consensus in the guise of development, and the struggle against it, and the country's longest ongoing protest in its 8th year, led by mothers seeking truth and justice for their loved ones, forcibly disappeared. The majority at the hands of Sri Lanka's security forces. Visits and summons by the CTID has become the norm for journalists in the north and east. During the time of Nimalarajan, the lack of recognition for local journalists was also a major impediment. Nimal, of course, reported from many outlets: Harel, Veerakesari, Ravaya, and the BBC, to name a few. He rode his rickety bicycle to where the story originated to gather information. The news was not relayed through electronic means like nowadays. This was not the developed stage of the internet and superfast communications. He, like many other journalists, had to rely on pen, paper, telephone, and fax. However, unlike his colleagues in other parts of the island, it was difficult for him to have access in a highly militarized region. There were checkpoints everywhere, and intimidation was all around the place. It was a challenge to prove that he was a journalist without having the accreditation from the Government Information Department. To get that plastic card, he had to be authorized